So I'm going to start out with a story. It's about a husband and a wife, and they are not getting along. And they've been fighting and not really liking each other much. And the husband is really good at giving the silent treatment. So that's in the place they're at right now. They haven't been talking for a couple days. But he is going on a business trip, and he needs to leave tomorrow morning for the airport at 6 a.m. He's not great at getting up with alarms. He usually uses his wife to wake him up. So rather than ask her, though, to wake him up, by the way, she gets up at 5, so it's really not a big deal for her to, wake him up. But rather than ask her to wake him up, since he's not talking to her, he's not giving in, he just leaves her a note where he knows she'll find it. So he writes on the note, "Please wake me up tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. I need to be on time for my flight." And he's feeling confident that she's going to see it, because she for sure is going to see it where he put it. He goes to bed knowing she'll wake him up in the morning. So he goes to sleep, he wakes up, looks at the clock, it's 8 a.m. He's in a panic. He bolts out of bed. He's about to go find her and give her a piece of his mind for not waking him up. And he looks down at the nightstand next to him and sees a note there. And it says, "Wake up, it's 6 a.m. So what was communicated was not the problem there, right? It was how it was communicated. So today we're going to talk about communication and how we talk, what we talk about, lots of good stuff around communication. I'm Stacey Gesinger. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I work here in Austin in private practice. Since COVID, I've just still been doing Zoom sessions. So if you put your name in the basket back there and you want to win therapy with me, we can still do that because we do it through Zoom, no matter where you're at. I work a lot with families from Team Luke, Hope for Minds, whose kiddo has a traumatic brain injury. So I do a lot of couple work with them as well as individual and family work. So whenever a couple comes to me, whether they're from Team Luke or wherever, they often cite communication as a problem. And they'll even say things like they aren't communicating. But what we know to be true is that we are always communicating. And this picture is a good example of that. No words are being said here, right? Can you see it okay too? Okay. And can you all see it okay? No words are being said here, but what are some things they might be communicating as you look at this? Frustration. What else might they be communicating? Anger, yeah, I think so. What else? Anything else you see there? Hard-headedness. I like that one. I like that. Sometimes our own experiences also come into play in what we see, right? Anything else you see here? Do you think they're liking each other right now? I don't think so. I don't think they're liking each other. Okay, how about this couple? What are they communicating? Does it look different than the last couple? Right? Yeah, they're sitting a lot closer, right? They're both smiling. They're looking either at each other's eyes or face, right? So what they're communicating is really different than the last couple, right? No words, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about how we communicate, and because I want you guys to think about this as you communicate with your spouse. And P.S., everything we talk about here isn't just for spouses or partners. It works great with kiddos. It works great with family members. So all of this is applicable to any relationship in your life. So the first way is sort of body posture. Like that's what we were looking at in those pictures, right? The way they were either crossing their arms, or the couple that had coffee were more open in the way they were sitting, right? So even just how we come into a room to talk to somebody can make a big difference. This also does include eye contact. As we saw again, that couple that seemed to be having a nice time, their faces were turned towards each other so they could look at each other. The other couple was so turned away they couldn't even look at each other if they wanted to. Like it would have been painful to try and turn around and look in the eyes, right? Our facial expressions. This one is one I am really good at. I'm very good at letting you know on my face how I feel. Well, if my husband and I are arguing, that's not great, because if we're in public or something, everybody knows we're having a fight just from my face, even if they can't hear what we're saying. Tone. So if I tell you I love you, I can say it, I love you, I love you. I love you. 3 different ways, all the same words, right? All meaning different things, right? So what we say is really influenced by all these things. Touch is something we're going to talk a lot about today. Hi, come in. Touch is something we're going to talk a lot about today, and we're going to really kind of delve into it more later. But I do want to say that, again, here in that second picture, when they were sitting next to each other, their legs were touching, right? And again, that conveys something like, I like you enough to be that close to you, right? And then how much space you have between. Again, that first couple had a lot of space between them. That second couple, hardly any space, right? If I'm too close to you and I'm in your face, that kind of space is not good either, right? That conveys something if I'm getting in your face. And then, of course, there are the actual words, which we will spend a lot of time talking about today. So one of the things I want you guys to think about is this concept of message. And so right now, I'm the sender here, right? And you guys are the receivers. I'm trying to give you a message. I want you to learn something here. I want you to take something away from this, right? But what I'm saying and what you're receiving may be very different things. This happens actually quite a lot in therapy. It will be so interesting. Sometimes I'll do a therapy session. They come back the next week and they'll say something like, oh, well, since you told me to get a divorce, I called the lawyer. I'm like, what? Like, I would never. And I know I didn't do it because I would never say get a divorce, right? But what they heard was that, right? And so I think it's important that we think about what our intention is, but then that we also check in with the person who's receiving it. Did you hear that right? Is what I'm trying to convey actually getting across the right way? So one way to do that is to really check in. One, as the sender, to check in. What did you hear me say? And especially like at the end of session, one thing I will say is, what are you going to take away from today? That's my clue of like, did you hear that I said get a divorce? Because I'm going to want to counter that if that's what you heard, right? But also as the receiver, you can do it too. You can say, hey, here's what I'm hearing you say. Like for instance, if I say to you, your outfit looks nice today. Well, you might hear that as, well, it doesn't look nice every other day. You hate every other outfit I've got, right? So you can check in with me. Are you saying you don't like my other outfits? No, that is not what I intended, right? That wasn't the message I wanted. What I wanted you to hear that I think you look great today, and I also like all your other outfits, right? So then we can clarify that message. And this is a part where we often forget to clarify, though. We let the message go and we just assume we know what's being said and we don't clarify it. And that's when we can get in a lot of trouble. Okay, so I want you to think about adjusting your message so the receiver understands it the way you intend, right? So if they're not hearing it right, then you got to say it differently. If you speak Spanish and I speak French and I just keep speaking French to you, is it going to make a difference? If I speak louder in French, no. If I speak softer, if I say it again and in a different way, no, I got to speak Spanish in order for you to understand it, right? So we have to keep adjusting until it gets just right. Okay, let's talk about some fun stuff. What to talk about? So y'all are parents in here, and once we have kiddos, it often becomes the thing we talk about most, right? It gets really easy to talk about kids, especially if our kiddos have special needs, especially special medical needs. We can really focus, we have to focus on that. We have to talk about that. Who's taking the kids to therapy? Who's calling the doctor? Who's doing all this, right? And so we spend a lot of time talking about our kiddos. How's the kiddo doing, right? Which is important. Hear me, I'm not saying don't talk about your kids, please do. But I want to give you some other things to talk about too, so you can have some fun and enjoy each other. So one of the really great things to talk about is your relationship with each other. So this is a way to get off the kiddos and talk about each other. You can talk about what's going well. I really appreciate that, you called the doctor. Thanks for doing that. It's feeling so great. I like how you're in charge of doctor stuff. I'm in charge of therapy, whatever. What's going well. But it doesn't only have to be around the kiddos. What do you need to feel more connected? You might say here, hey, I would really like us to spend some more time together than we are. Is there a way we can do that? I think that would help me feel connected, right? What would make me feel more loved, more supported? What are some other things that y'all can think about that are things you can talk about, or maybe they are things you talk about already that you're doing that aren't kids? What are some things you can talk about that aren't kids? It's hard. What was that? Camping. Oh, I like it. Okay. Do you like to plan for camping and stuff? Nice. That's a fun thing to talk about. Trips or getaways, even if they're like little tiny ones, right? Like an hour even.
Where they are emotionally throughout the day.
Yes. Ooh, wow. Have you been reading ahead of my notes? That is, I have a slide on that one later. I love it. Yes, absolutely. How did you feel today? Right? That's different even than what did you do today, but how did you feel about what you did? Ooh, I love that one. Yeah, what else? What else do y'all talk about besides kids? Work. Yeah, that one we can end up talking a lot about too, right? Sometimes too much. But that's a good one, though, to talk about when we spend a lot of time there, right? That's kind of an important piece. So I think it is good to check in about that and let your spouse know, what are you doing at work? How's it going? How do you feel about what's happening at work, right? Okay. So what I want you guys to do, what I would encourage you to do, is to designate times to talk about the kids, for sure. Let's do our schedule, Sunday night, whatever that looks like. But also, I want you to designate times to not talk about the kids. So times when you talk about camping or work or what have you, where like, hey, this is just our fun time, where we don't have to talk about that hard stuff. Maybe sometimes you need to designate times to talk about hard stuff too. But getting it on the calendar makes it happen, right? When we schedule it, it happens. Okay, we're going to switch gears a little bit here, and we're going to talk about love maps. Love maps are something that was coined by a therapist named John Gottman, and I'll put his book name up in a few slides. But he is the only therapist who's done empirically validated research on what works with couples. So I really like to use him a lot in therapy. And he's got some great books, so I highly recommend him. But one of the things he talks about as being important are love maps. And these are just things that, much like a map in real life, kind of tell us about our partner, right? It's things that we know about our partner that maybe nobody else knows. It gives us good insight into them and sort of a detailed picture of their inner world as well as their external world. So this is something that you can talk about other than kids, right? So it includes things like hopes, dreams, likes, dislikes. He actually has, if you just Google love map questions, he's got them online, and they're things like this, like what's my favorite band? Who do I admire most? What do I enjoy doing when I have a day off? My husband and I were at a birthday party the other day. We happened to both be at it, which we never are anymore these days, but we were both at the same birthday party, and we had some time just to ourselves. And so I pulled up Gottman's list of questions, and I said, I was looking at this the other day, and there were a couple questions on here that I don't know, even though we've been together for like 30 years. So there's a couple questions on here I didn't know how to answer for you. I wonder if you even know how to answer them. And he didn't. Some of them he was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that. So it was really kind of fun because, a good way to find out what you like on your own, but also what your partner likes. So for us, it was just, again, a good, fun way to talk about something other than the birthday party or the kids that we were doing. There's also, have any of y'all ever played Table Topics? It's not really a game, it's just questions. But they have different versions of it. This one is therapy, they have couples, they have family. But these are cool because they're just questions. Like the first question is, what's the craziest thing you've done this year? So it's just questions, again, when you're like, we're on a date, we don't know what to talk about, we've talked about everything, we've known each other 20 years, right? So these are kind of fun. We like to put them on the dining table sometimes too, and so the whole family can take part of it. If we have time later, we will do some of these together. Okay, then here's that slide I was talking about earlier that you had referenced. So this is how I see us being made up. I see us being made up spiritually, physically, emotionally, intellectually, and socially. It's all connected, and when one is suffering, all of them can suffer. But these are areas that are great to talk about and check in with your spouse. As a therapist, when you come to me, I check in about how are you doing in each of these areas? Where are you really solid and doing well? And where are maybe some areas you need to grow or to take care of yourself better in? So if you check in with your spouse, for instance, spirituality, you can check in like, hey, how's your spiritual walk going? What does that look like? What's God teaching you? Is there anything you want to do differently there, right? So that's a great way to sort of remind each other, hey, are you taking care of yourself in these areas? And I'd love to get to know you in those areas, right? So this is always a good one to return to, again, for self-care and also for just things to talk about with your spouse. All right, how many of you are familiar with the love languages? Yes, okay. Oh, everybody, awesome. Well, this one's going to be a quick section then. You know, Gary Chapman wrote the book, The 5 Love Languages, and they are touch, words of affirmation, gifts, quality time, and acts of service. So just as a refresher, since y'all are familiar with it, knowing what your partner's love language is important because that's how they feel loved, right? We often speak out of our own love language, but that may not be our partner's, and then they're not going to end up feeling loved. So for instance, mine is touch. My husband's is not. So he has to really think about giving me a hug or, you know, give me a pat on the back or what have you, because his is words of affirmation. Luckily, actually, that's one of mine too, so it's really easy for me to give them to him and him to give them to me. But one of the things I want you to think about, or maybe to start doing differently, is not expecting your partner to be a mind reader. Because even though they may know what your love language is, sometimes we think, okay, my husband knows touch is my love language. He should just automatically know he has to give me a hug every morning. Well, even though we've been together 30 years and he should know that, no, shoulds are no good. So we're not going to should our partner. We're not going to say, you should do this. We're going to let them know, hey, you know what? My love bank's a little low. I would love to get more hugs this week. Would you be willing to give me a hug every morning when you wake up? Sure, I'd be willing to do that, right? So if we ask for what we want and we get it, it counts. Sometimes people, again, come to me in therapy and it feels like if I have to ask for it, it doesn't count. But that's not true. It still counts, right? If you ask for it and you get it, it counts, okay? And remember, your partner's not a mind reader, so it's really important to ask if you need to. So I want to touch on touch here because while you may have, again, one or two that are kind of your main love language, they're all great, actually. I mean, who doesn't love all of these? These are all nice things, right? But touch is one that is really, really key for everybody, even if it's not your love language. Even if you think, I don't really like to be touched. Sometimes parents are at that place where you're touched all day by the kiddos. Like, you're like, don't touch me. I don't want to be touched anymore, right? I'm here to say, no, don't do that. Like, you've got to get touch. When babies are born, what do? We hold them all the time. We either feed or nurse them by holding them, right? We're designed to do that because when we have that, especially skin-on-skin touch, it releases oxytocin. And oxytocin is the drug that tells our brain, I love and belong to you. So even if you're not getting along with your spouse, if you do touch for at least 10 seconds, your brain is going to start releasing a chemical that says, I love and belong to you. How amazing is that? Like, that's incredible. We can do a lot to turn our relationship around just with touch. Again, works great with kiddos, works with friends. And again, at least 10 seconds of skin on skin is what's really important. So whether you're holding hands, whether you're cheek to cheek, whatever that looks like, but having that touch, I really, really encourage you to make sure you're doing it every day with your partner. Oxytocin also relieves depression, anxiety, makes you more generous, more empathetic. Like, if you do this, your conversations are going to go so much better. We also get other releases and hits when we touch too. We get dopamine, serotonin, we get GABA, which is the waves that are released when we have really deep sleep. So it's very calming to have touch as well. Have I convinced you that touch is good? Okay. All right. I will move on from touch then, as long as you have really got it, that it is so, so important. Okay, we're going to talk about when communicating goes awry, because sometimes this happens. Sometimes what we're saying is not going so well. So Gottman, that I referred to earlier, has a book called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, and he talks about this concept in there. He calls it the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I don't know if any of y'all are Bible scholars, but that's also he took it from the Bible. God talked about it first, but It is. I think it's a good concept how he talks about it. He has lots of books, but this is a nice one. It's very readable if you're wanting a good book on marriage. But so the 4 horsemen, I'm going to tell you what they are, and then we're going to kind of break them down and talk about them. But they're criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. And Gottman, if you remember, I told you he's done a lot of research on couples. And so what he's found is when these 4 things are present, or even a couple of them are when a couple of them are present, he can predict that couple is going to get a divorce. So it's not to say that these won't exist in your marriage or your relationships at times. They will. Like, these come up. But if they're consistently there, it's something to notice and to really work at changing. So you may say, well, my partner's not willing to work on this. My partner's not willing to change or do anything about it. So what I want to tell you is, 1, you can't change your partner. So you can't make them change, no. But you can work on you. You can work on changing these if you have some of these present. And by doing that, you will influence your partner, and you may really, really change your marriage. So even if your partner is not willing to work, I want to encourage you that you can work and change you, and it might change and turn the whole ship around. So let's talk about what these are, because they're not good if they're present. So we're going to talk about what they are and then how we turn it around, okay? And again, don't panic if you're like, oh my gosh, we have all these in our marriage. It doesn't mean you're getting a divorce. It just means turn it around. Okay, so criticism is when you focus on your partner's character or personality flaws. So it might be like, you never take out the trash, you're so lazy. Or you don't ever speak nicely to me, right? That's a criticism. Criticism is looking back at the past, at what's already happened. The problem is we can't change what's happened, right? We can do something, though, about the future. So instead of being critical, what helps is asking for what you want instead. So rather than looking back and saying, here's what you did wrong or here's what's wrong with you, you can turn it around to, hey, here's how I'd like it to be done differently in the future. So for that example of you never take out the trash, you're lazy, it would instead look like, hey, I feel frustrated that I'm taking out the trash most of the time. Would you be willing to take out the trash regularly? That's different, right? You now have a choice. And I also can hear from you if you're willing to do that or not. And side note, that would you be willing is one of my favorite phrases with couples, because to me it's such a better thing than just, can you take out the trash? It really invites collaboration. Would you be willing to do that? I'm letting you know, I realize you might say no, right? And I'm going to be okay with that. So asking for what you want, way better than looking back and criticizing. And again, it's more future oriented. It's how we can do this differently in the future, because that's what we want, right? Couples tend to rehash and bring up the past a lot. Have you all ever found that is helpful? Right? No, it's never helpful. We can't change it, and it just makes everybody really upset, right? Okay, the next one is defensiveness. And this one is an attempt to protect that ends up blaming your partner. So when we're attacked, or when we feel attacked, of course, what are we going to do? We're going to defend, right? And this one is really hard because our natural response to attack is defense. So we have to work really hard, even if we're feeling attacked by our partner, not to defend. I know that's really, really hard. But how we do that is, instead of blaming our partner, we take responsibility and we validate what our partner's saying. So an example of defensiveness might be like the partner, I tell you I'm tired, or I'm upset that you haven't taken out the trash. And then you might respond by saying like, well, it's your fault, you never remind me, right? That's that like defensive list. Like, instead of just saying, you're right, I haven't been taking out the trash, I blame you, or I've been busy, I blame something else, I make an excuse, right? Are excuses helpful? Has anybody found that to be true? No, nobody's found excuses to be helpful, right? So again, instead, this 2-part piece here is really important. So 1, just taking responsibility. You're right, I haven't been doing it as much. Or maybe I'm thinking, I take out the trash half the time. Like, I take it out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you just do it the other days. Like, So maybe I'm not even totally agreeing. I can still take responsibility though, right? I can still say something like, an apology, like, I'm sorry that I haven't been taking out the trash as much as you would like me to, right? So I'm not necessarily agreeing exactly, but I am validating my partner's experience, right? And even more on validation would be something like, yeah, I can see that's really frustrating that you're having to take out the trash a lot, right? Now, again, I'm not negating my own experience. Later on, I can talk about my experience, but if I validate first, my partner is going to be wide open then to hearing what I have to say. If I don't validate it, they're going to get louder and say it over and over until I let them know I've heard. You've probably experienced that, right? When you're talking and your partner starts getting louder and louder and they keep repeating themselves, good chance that you haven't validated. Validating, really, really key. So if that's one thing that you take away from today, validation, it can really turn the ship around. Okay, let's go to contempt. This one is the most destructive. And it looks like sarcasm, eye rolling, name calling, mocking, being disrespectful. It's fueled by long simmering negative thoughts about your partner. So, and I call them negative tapes. So, you all are younger than me, but we used to listen to tapes back in the day and we could play them over and over again, right? Now it's CDs. Well, now I don't know what it is. It's just Spotify. We don't even have CDs anymore, right? But we used to be able to play those over and over again, right? Well, we have tapes that we play all the time. Sometimes they're about ourselves. Sometimes they're about our partner. Often they are not very kind, right? So when that partner doesn't take out the trash, we can be like, oh, you're such a jerk. You never take out the trash. You never help. You don't even care about me, right? That's a negative tape I'm playing over and over again. Well, how am I going to feel about my partner if I keep playing those tapes? I'm not going to feel very good. I'm going to be really contemptuous. I'm going to probably also even start thinking like, I'm better than my partner. I would never do that. I always take out the trash, right? So contempt is sort of this like, I'm better than you and you're not getting things right. So that's why it's so dangerous, because it puts us really not on equal footing with our partner. So instead, we got to change the tapes about our partner. We got to change what we're thinking about our partner. So sometimes when you're really, really in a bad place with your partner, it's hard to change the tape. You might not be able to say something like, I really like you, I really like you. Like that your brain, because your brain's not going to believe a lie. Like at that moment, you don't like your partner, right? But a tape that you could play that is true is maybe, I choose you, I choose you, I choose you, right? This is a more positive tape that says, hey, we're in this, I'm sticking here, I'm not out the door. Because often where our tapes go to when it gets really bad is like, we should just get a divorce. Well, that's not helpful. That's not going to help you work out anything in your marriage, right? So, or your partnership. So changing the tapes, really trying to positively think about your spouse, and it's sort of like the benefit of the doubt, right? And now, obviously, if your partner is abusive or anything like that, this does not apply to that. But we're just talking about normal, everyday, right? Your partner usually takes out the trash, but this week they didn't take out the trash. So the positive, if we can have what's called positive sentiment override, that's when we say to ourselves, well, you usually take out the trash. Something must be going on that you didn't do it this week. I can pinch in, I'll just do it, and hopefully next week we'll get back on track, right? That's that positive sentiment override. So thinking that way, giving your partner that benefit of the doubt, makes you feel so much better about them, right? So changing those tapes and really looking at them is really important. I always encourage my clients to write down the tapes they're noticing about their partner so that they can then change them. Because often we're not aware of how often we're playing those tapes. And you can always reach out to me if you're having trouble changing the tape. Shoot me a text and I'll be like, here's how you can change that. Okay, stonewalling. I think this is the last one. I think we've done 3 so far. Stonewalling is like when you literally put up a stone wall between you and your partner. It was, for those of you that were here, it was that guy in the beginning who gave his wife the silent treatment. They got in a fight and he gave her the silent treatment. That's stonewalling. Like, I'm just shutting down. You don't have to leave to do it. You can even just sit there and maybe start going on your phone, or you just ignore them and you pretend kind of like you're listening, but you're really not, right? That's stonewalling. And it can even be that you just leave. And it completely disengages you from your partner. It's a big disconnector. So instead, what you can do is self-soothing, and we're going to spend some time here talking about this. But I also want to say here at stonewalling, leaving is not always bad. And in fact, we call them timeouts, just like maybe some of you have done with your kiddos and given them timeouts, right? Timeouts for you is important. They look different than stonewalling, though, because stonewalling is just, again, like a complete shutdown. If I need a timeout to regulate myself because I've become very activated inside and I'm about to yell at you or I'm about to say things I don't want to say, I can say something like, hey, I need 20 minutes. I'm going to go for a walk, and then when I come back, we can finish talking about this, right? So I let you know that I'm not just leaving and I'm not going to not return to it. And that's a really important skill, because when we're activated, we aren't in our executive functioning brain, so we're not going to talk about anything good. It's not going to go anywhere good. And our bodies need about 20 minutes. When we're really activated, our bodies need about 20 minutes to calm down. Now, sometimes you might need more, but 20 minutes is usually about what you need if you're actively doing and using tools to help soothe yourself, okay? So let's talk about what some of those tools are. And again, these are great to use with your kiddos. These are great for whenever you need them. So the first and most obvious is a deep breath. It's such a simple thing, but it does a lot for our body. And I always recommend that you practice deep breathing every day, because the more you do it, the better able your body is to return to it. So especially if you maybe experience anxiety a bit in your life, if you start practicing deep breaths a couple times a day would be great. You're going to find that your central nervous system is able to return to calm more easily. So I'm going to give you 2 breaths that I really like. If you want to do them with me, that'd be great. So the first one is we're going to use our fingers, and I'm kind of having allergies, but I'm going to still breathe through my nose. So you take your right finger, you plug your right nostril, you breathe in through your left nostril and out through your left nostril. Yes, and do it as slow and as long as you can. And then once you've done that, you switch. And you take your left finger, you plug your left nostril, you breathe in through your right nostril and out through your right nostril. So you keep switching and doing that for as long and slow as you can. And you want to think about when the air comes in, it going all the way down to your gut and expanding your belly like a balloon, and then deflate the balloon. So what happens when we use our hands like that is we are not only using our breath to calm our central nervous system, but now we're engaging different parts of our brain. So we're lighting up different parts of our brain because we're also using different sides of our body. And when we do that, we now are engaging more of our executive functioning brain. That allows us to have a good conversation. And then the second breath I like to do is one where you just take a long, deep breath, as long as you can. And then when you think you can't go anymore, you take another one. And that second one is probably just like maybe a second. But when you add that second breath, expands your lungs differently. And again, it really calms down that central nervous system. So those are 2 kinds of breaths that I like to do. And again, I encourage you to start doing those every day. Going for a walk or exercising in some way is truly one of the best things we can do to regulate ourselves. And what I recommend is if you've gotten to the place where you need to go for a walk because the talk is not going well, when you come back, take your partner with you for a walk. So you guys exit. Now, it's 100 degrees out still, so you might not want to go for a walk. Walk around your island, walk in place. But if when you talk to your spouse, you do exercise at the same time, you're going to stay in your executive functioning brain and you're going to have a better conversation. So I really, really encourage you, if you know you have to have a hard talk, do it while you're out on a walk. Also, if you can be outside, because again, I know it's so hot, but if you can be outside, that is going to add another layer of you're probably not going to yell in front of the neighbors, right? You're going to think more consciously about your tone and your face, all those things we talked about in the beginning, right? All those things that also communicate to your spouse. So this one's a favorite of mine for self-soothing, and it's singing. So when we sing, especially when we extend long notes, that stimulates our vagus nerve. And our vagus nerve runs from our gut to our brain stem. And the vagus nerve is part of the parasympathetic system. And so what happens is a parasympathetic nervous system. So what happens is when we sing, it stimulates that, which then in turn calms our body down. And that affects our brain, our heart, even our digestion. So just the simple act of singing can do a lot to calm ourselves down. So if you want to go and listen to awesome music while you're taking your time out and sing along, that's a great thing to do. Okay. And then proprioceptive movement. I don't know if y'all have talked about this with your kiddos, maybe in therapy or something, but proprioceptive movement is really just like a pushing, so and a tension. So when we do proprioceptive movement, for whatever reason, it calms our body down. So pushing on your arms is a good one. You can do a push up. One of my favorites is I won't do it now because I might fall over because it's a tall chair, but if you sit on the chair and you push up, right, and you try and balance that way, that's a great proprioceptive movement. And it's a great calmer because as you're pushing up, your body is also trying to balance. And when we balance, we have to use our executive functioning brain. So just the mere act of balancing too can really do a lot to calm and self-soothe. That's why yoga is so great. Well, there's lots of reasons why yoga is so great for us, but part of it is there's lots of balance poses in yogas that calms our body down. And again, gets us in the good thinking part of our brain. And then here's touch again. Touch is a great way to self-soothe. We don't only have to touch another human being for it to be effective though. We can touch ourselves. So rubbing your hands together like this, it's going to take you a little bit longer than it does with your partner, but you can rub your hands together like this. That calms and regulates the body. You can rub your shoulders down. You can rub, if you do this one, women don't love it because we all have makeup on and we don't like to rub our cheeks, right? But we have so many receptors in our hands and so many in our cheeks. So when you rub like this, it's really, really relaxing for the body. My son started doing that he's 10 now, but he started doing that when he was an itty bitty baby. He would rub his cheek. And then I learned that later on I learned that, it's a self-soothing for him because he does it when he did it when he was little, when he would be upset or something. It was a way for him to calm himself. So it's just a natural way that we can soothe ourselves. We can also soothe our partner. So when we're in those places where communication has gone awry, there's things that we can do to soothe our partner. They're kind of the same things that we do to soothe ourselves, right? We can touch our partner. We can give a nice, gentle, soft touch. Be careful because if you're mad, don't give a mean squeeze, We can be playful. When we engage in playfulness with our partner, it does a lot to turn things around, right? Singing is a great way to be playful with your partner. So maybe you're like, we're getting out of control here, so even just like doing something like that, you might make your partner laugh, right? Maybe you talk in a silly voice. Playful takes things, from a level 10 back down to a level 1. Apologizing and validating, here they are again, like really, really important, right? When we apologize, when we validate, when we take responsibility, sorry, I keep hitting my microphone. When we take responsibility, we can do so much to soothe our partner. And it feels really, really good to be on the receiving end of that. We can also be a calm presence. So even though our partner may be worked up, if we can work at taking deep breaths and being calm, we can do a lot to influence their emotional response. Did you all ever watch that show? It's been a while now, but it was called The Dog Whisperer. And Cesar Chavez was the dog whisperer. And he would go to people's houses and there'd be this dog that was very upset and barking and yipping, and the owner didn't like it, and the owner would be there yelling at the dog to stop barking. And Caesar would come in and he wouldn't say anything, and he would just stand there calmly, and the dog would stop barking and it would calm down too. I thought it was I actually looked it up to see if that was actually legit that he did that, and it is true, that did happen. So, according to Google. But so if he can calm a dog with his presence, certainly can we maybe influence each other as humans with even more higher intelligence? Yeah, we can, right? We can influence each other with how we are. So you work, even though your partner is worked up, if you can work at calming yourself down, you might turn that ship around. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about repair. Repair is a piece that I see couples neglecting often. So we have this blow up or this communication that's gone awry, and then we just leave it and we don't repair. And what happens is it starts stacking and building, right? And so it's like we keep this tally inside of all these times we've not gotten along or something has been hurtful. If we don't repair, it's going to explode at some point. So repair is really, really an important final step. And it looks a lot like self-soothing, really, a lot of the same things, but just smiling after you've, like look in each other's eyes, smile. That was a fake smile. I can't give a non-fake smile right now. But, smiling at your partner when to let them know, hey, I love you, I care about you, right? Giggling with each other. I love it, see? Giving you the hug. Here's touch again. I'm going to keep talking about touch. Hug is a great repair. Being playful, a great repair. Being complimentary, a great repair. Apologizing, kind of the most important, right? Like, it's really, I want you to do these things, but I want you to attach the apology to it, because the apology is what feels really, really good. But it can't be an empty apology. So you actually do have to work at changing the behavior. If you apologize and you keep apologizing for the same behavior, you're not sincere. So that means you got some work to do. And validating. Again, when we validate our partner's experience, hey, I know that was really rough. I'm so sorry I said some mean things. I really want to take responsibility for saying those things. It was not okay that I said those things, and I'm going to work really hard not to say them. I can see that it was really hurtful for you. That I can see that it was really hurtful for you. That's a validating piece, right? I see what's going on with you. It's huge. Okay, and then my favorite thing and the most important, so if this is all you take from today, I hope it's this. It's gratitude. This literally has saved my marriage many times. I've seen it save other people's marriage, and I hope that you will do it every single day for the rest of your lives as long as you're married. It works great with your kiddos and your families too. But so I'm gonna give you some real specifics about how I encourage you to do it. So I want you to look into each other's eyes. So obviously it really is helpful if you're in person. So being in person is the most important, best. If you can't be in person, do it on Zoom. If you can't do it on Zoom, do it on a phone call. If you can't do it on a phone call, do it through text or email, okay? This is how important it is. Like, if you're not together, I still want you to do it. So you're going to look into each other's eyes. You're going to hold hands. So now we're getting touch again, right? So we're also releasing oxytocin. And then you're going to say 3 things that you're grateful for about your partner from the last 24 hours. So it's going to be new every time. You're going to have to, I don't want you to keep saying, like, thank you for dinner, it was so yummy. Thank you for dinner, it was so yummy. Like, it starts to become insincere. So we're going to make them new every time. And you're also going to add how it makes you feel. And this is a really important piece, because now we're connecting and being connected by our feelings. And that is a game changer. So I'm going to give you some examples. Thank you so much for taking out the trash last night. I really appreciate that you did that. It really made me feel cared for. And also, of course, I'm holding hands and looking into my partner's eyes, right? Thank you so much when you walked in the door last night. You smiled at me. That felt really good. I really liked that you smiled at me. It made me feel loved, right? So it was a simple little thing, a smile. It doesn't have to be a big, ginormous thing. Simple little thing like smiling. And so those 2 were related to our relationship, right? If you can make them about your relationship, that is better. But sometimes you are maybe in a bad place and you can't even think of anything good about your partner that they are doing for you. Do it outside of your relationship. So it might be something like, I really appreciate that you're a great dad. Today, when you wiped the kids' noses when they were snotty, that made me feel really helped. I really appreciate that. You are such a great dad and so involved, right? So I couldn't think of anything nice that he had done in relation to me, so I made it about our kiddos, right? And it was a small thing. I was wiping a snotty nose, but I connected with him on that. I appreciated it, okay? So the thing that this does is twofold. One, if I know we're doing appreciations every day, I'm going to be nicer, right? Because I don't want to sit across from my partner and have him not have anything good to say about me, right? That's embarrassing. So the other thing it does is it teaches my brain to scan and look for what is going well. So remember those tapes that I talked about? It influences those tapes because when I'm thinking, okay, I got to find 3 things that you're doing well today, we have confirmation bias in our brains, right? That is what we believe to be true, we will seek out and we will find confirmation that it is true, right? So, and that can go positively or negatively. So when we work at gratitude, it goes in the positive direction. If I'm looking for ways that you are doing something great, then I'm going to find it, right? If I'm looking for ways that you're being a jerk, I'm going to find that too. So gratitude gives us a place to really help our brain start scanning differently. And this is probably one of the best things it does, which is it really changes what we see in our partner. Do y'all have any questions on the gratitude piece? Okay. So those are my little tips on communicating and different ways to communicate, things to watch out for, things to work on, and some tools to utilize. But truly, I hope if you just take one thing from here, it's the gratitude. I hope that you will do that with your partner every day because it really will make a difference. And maybe throw in some validation there too. That'd be great. That's it. All right. Well, if you want, we don't have that much time because you're about to go to your next session. I was going to say we can do a few little table topics if you guys want to practice. Should I not have done that? I turned it off. Should I? Sorry. Okay. We can practice good communication and validating. Does anybody want to do at least one with me? Yes? All right. Okay, I'm gonna, why don't we do it this way? First, I will ask you the question and I will validate or just let you know what I'm hearing what you're saying. So I'm gonna mirror back what you're saying or I'm going to paraphrase what you're saying. We're just gonna do good listening with each other, okay? And then we'll switch roles, okay? So this one, you just have to answer the question. You don't have to do the hard part here. Okay, so what's the craziest thing you've done this year?
I don't do a lot of crazy things. I'm stuck at home. Come here, honestly. Travel by myself, and left my daughter at home with my husband. That was pretty wild.
Yeah. So you don't usually do a lot of crazy things, but your crazy thing this year was coming here. You came by yourself. You got on a plane by yourself. You left your husband at home. Yep. Did I hear you right?
You did.
Okay. So, and that's a good way to check in too, is did I hear you right? Because you might be like, no, I left my sister at home, right? And then I can be like, oh, it was your sister you left at home. Okay, right? So then we can kind of clarify there. Okay, so, all right, do you want to ask me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you, I should have practiced mine. Okay. So you can just get these on Amazon. Okay. They're called Table Topics. Yeah, and they're in my slides if you forget what they are. There's some for couples. This one is therapy. It's not very therapeutic, but this one is called therapy. There's one for couples. There's one for families. I think they have quite a few. So, yeah.
Okay, what is the most stressful part of your day?
Ooh, morning time, getting my son ready for school. So, because I do, I make him breakfast. I get his backpack ready, and it always feels like it's so fast. And we try to have some quiet time too. So we're trying to squeeze in a lot before he's out the door.
Yeah. So you want me to?
Yeah. So now you.
Okay. So the mornings are chaotic, and also you feel like you need to take your time and not rush him, maybe.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love how you checked in there too, and so you gave me that little is that right kind of thing? Yeah, that was awesome. Amazing. You did great. Yeah.
I have a question. So how do you coexist when you're in a fight or flight mode? Like when something crazy is happening, like with your kid or in whatever situation?
Yeah. I would say the most important is try and get yourself out of fight or flight because we can't be productive in fight or flight. it's, kind of basically everything shuts down except that base part of our brain that is fight, flight, or freeze, right? So those self-soothing things, that's a great thing to do. Now, you can invite your partner to do. Are you talking about like if your partner's right there and you guys are?
Like for example, like when our daughter has hospital stays, we go into like fight or flight, and he's like in his, and then I'm in my own.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you coexist with that?
Yeah, I would say try and help soothe each other in that, because that is the beauty about having a partner, is you can try and soothe each other through it. So start with touch. Like, you may be so activated you can't even speak, or right. So try touch to calm each other down. And again, if it's like moving touch that's gentle, that's going to help calm your body down and calm your brain down. The deep breaths, all those calming tools, because again, the first thing is to get out of fight, flight, or freeze, because nothing good happens in there unless we need it. Like honestly, it's a gift, because if a bear is coming, we need fight, flight, or freeze to run away from the bear, right? So that's a gift that we have, this thing in our brain, but often it gets activated when we don't need it, right? Like if you're in that situation where you have to go to the hospital, well, you're not running from a bear, you just need to get stuff done, right? So what happens is it gets a little haywire. It gets activated when we don't actually need it. So one thing I also encourage people to do is, one, just check in, like, okay, I'm in fight, flight, or freeze. Why? What's going on? Like, is there a bear? Is there something I need to take care of? No, there's no bear. Okay, then what do I need to take care of myself? What do I need right now? Maybe I need a walk. Maybe I need some deep breaths. Maybe I need a touch, right? So even just noticing. The other part, though, that I would say is, I think part of it is accepting, too, because sometimes we try and fight it so much, like, this is awful, and I don't want to feel this way anymore. This is hard enough. I don't need to be feeling like this. So sometimes if we just accept, like, you know what? This is really hard. We are having to go to the hospital again. We don't know what's going to happen. This is so scary. Sometimes just accepting it is also a piece that allows your brain to stop thinking about it, because it is justifiably awful, right? And so when you're like trying to calm yourself down and you can't, sometimes it's because it's a really hard situation, and it's important to just accept and say, kind of like soothing yourself, like, hey, this is really hard and this is really awful, and it makes sense that I'm really worked up right now, because this is not easy, and I know what this looks like because we've done this before, So yeah, is there more pieces of that question, though, that maybe I didn't answer?
No.
Does that feel helpful?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's hard, but I think, and it's hard when you're both activated and you're both in that place, but really if you can try and even just talk about that, like, hey, it seems like we're both really worked up right now. We're both really dysregulated. I like that word better because it seems less, worked up is, sometimes that can feel kind of, you're really worked up right now. Like, that doesn't feel good, right? But like, hey, it feels like we're both dysregulated right now. Let's get regulated. How can we help regulate each other, right? So maybe even you're in that moment able to see it. Maybe he can't even see it, right? But hopefully maybe one of you can see it, and so then you can talk about, hey, it seems like we're both dysregulated here. Let's go for a walk, or we can't go for a walk because we got to get to the hospital, but let's hold hands on the way there. Let's take some deep breaths. I'm going to lead us in some deep breathing. There's lots of apps that are like meditative, or there's one I can also, anything I've talked about, if you guys have questions, feel free to email me. I'm happy to send you like the table topics or any of that. But there's an app that I love. It's called the Tapping Solution, I think is what it's called. And it uses tapping to help regulate the body, which is a whole other thing that we could spend a whole thing on. But it really does help calm the body. It's kind of one of those weird things that just works, But again, it's stimulating both sides of the brain, much like when we did with the breathing, right? So maybe you even like put something like that on the way in the hospital or in the car, right? You put on, or something that's meditative, or music. You play lovely music that can help calm. But I think just kind of trying to use all those tools. But again, at the end of the day, sometimes we use our best tools and all of them, and they don't work because we're going through something really hard. And it's okay to accept that and say, okay, this is just really hard right now. And then maybe you also, though, remind yourself, okay, we will get through it, though, right? We've gotten through it before. We're going to get through it again. Yeah.
Can I just add to her question?
Absolutely.
A little bit? And I think probably for a lot of us, the tension when our child is in the hospital is because the mother and the father roles are so vastly different. So you have one parent who's holed up in the hospital for weeks and months on end, and then you have one who's like tending to, has to work and tending to every other thing going on in your life. And never is there just, you have a child in the hospital. There's always multiple things,
Yeah.
conflicting.
Absolutely.
And so how, we're 8 years in, so I can tell you like the ways my husband and I have done this right and wrong. But how would, I don't know, I think it's just the mother and the father role is so stark, different.
Can I add
Yeah.
to that?
Yeah.
So what we normally do sometimes, like throughout the day, we check in. Like for example, we use like 100%. Where are you? And I'll be like, oh, I could give you 50 today, or I could give you 70%, or whatever.
Love it.
So if he has more than me, then he takes over, or vice versa. But that's how we check in.
Oh, I love that.
But in the hospital, that's where we struggle.
Yeah. So normally are you able to hear her on your thing too? I'll just reiterate what she said in case you didn't. Yeah. So I love that you guys check in and you say, okay, where are you at? What percentage are you able to give today? I'm 30, you're 9. That doesn't add up. I'm 30, you're 70, right? Okay, you're at 70, then I need you to take over at the hospital today because I'm at 30, right? And I got to stay home and try and get myself together, right? So yeah, I love that you check it. That's a great tool to utilize. I'm going to use that one. Yeah, absolutely. So checking in is really good. And I think communicating more on what you're saying too is really communicating like, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed and it feels like most of this is on me. So really letting your partner know like, hey, here's where I'm at. And maybe you're even like, I realize that's how it has to be. Like I have a family that's kind of the theme that keeps coming up, right? But that's how it has to be. Like he has to go to work, so they have money to pay for all that, right? So it has to be that she is the one that is constantly there. But it doesn't mean it's still not valid that it's frustrating or hard or overwhelming or you wish it were different. So still talking about it, I think, is really important and letting your partner know. But again, especially if maybe there's times like, hey, I realize you've been at work all day, but if you're at 70%, then can I go for a walk? Because I need to get out of here. Yeah. But it is, and you're right, it often is very, very lopsided. And that is just...
And sometimes you just have to tap out.
Yep. Yeah, even if you can't. Like, so even...
Or sometimes, like me and him, we're both tapped out, so we have learned to let her be because the doctors and nurses are doing what they need to do.
Yeah.
So we've learned, it's been hard, but we've learned to step out.
Yeah.
And both tap out or do whatever we need.
Absolutely.
But it's hard.
It is hard. But yeah, especially if they're at the hospital, they're in good hands. So step out. Absolutely. And let go of the guilt. Because, and hopefully you have good nurses, that will say, you guys go home, get sleep. Like, but they're not always necessarily aware of that. So you just do it. Even if you feel like they're judging you, do it. Don't take on the guilt. Don't take on whatever they're trying to throw down. If they're like, you should be here or whatever. Like, they're in good hands. That's the time. If you can, because I know nursing too, like you may have 3 nurses and none of them show up this week. So if you have a chance to, tap out, as you say, do it. Yeah, absolutely. And let go of the guilt. Let go of the guilt. Yeah. I like you to sing the Frozen song, Let It Go. Like that's what I want you to do. When the guilt comes up, let it go. Like just imagine her blowing it away. But let it go. Yeah, because if you guys need rest. You need rest. And you very rarely get it. Yeah, these are great questions and thoughts. Any others? I know you probably want to get to the next thing, but thanks so much, guys. I appreciate your participation. And take good care of yourselves. And like I said, feel free to reach out with any questions or comments or any other things we get into.